Welcome to Hard Talk. I'm Stephen Sacker. Donald Trump claimed he could broker the deal of the century between Israel and the Palestinians. Instead, he seems to have entrenched the hostility. My guest is veteran Arab-Israeli MP and one-time advisor to Yasser Arafat, Ahmed Tibi. Is the Arab-Israeli experience a sign that the uneasy, messy status quo is the only viable response to the conflict between Jew and Arab? Ahmed Tibi, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you, Stephen.
I think we have to start with the impact of the Donald Trump presidency on relations between Palestinians and Israelis. Would you agree that it has fundamentally changed the dynamic in the region?
Yes, for the negative. I think that Trump and his administration promoted and promoting anarchy in the region and anarchy in the world by supporting, enhancing, encouraging violation of the international law and adopting one side on behalf of the other. President Trump, via his speech about Jerusalem, he totally adopted the Israeli narrative and the occupation narrative. It is to say that he and his three musketeers, advisors, who are great supporters of the settlements, adopted the talking points of Benjamin Netanyahu.
Well, you can make your points about international law, but surely what Donald Trump has actually done is recognize reality in perhaps a more honest way than previous US presidents, because the truth is, it's obvious to everyone that the Israeli capital is in Jerusalem. That's where the Prime Minister's office is, it's where the cabinet meets, it's where the government buildings are. And Donald Trump has said, enough with this nonsense. Let's just recognize reality.
That's nonsense, because 1967, East Jerusalem was occupied in 1967. This is the reality. And if there is a thief in the area and he stole your house, it is reality. You are not supposed to accept reality as it is legitimate fact.
Sure, but Trump did say in the course last December of announcing that he would move the embassy to Jerusalem, and we understand it may happen quicker than we thought this year, he did say, look, I'm not prejudging what the two parties finally agree on Jerusalem. They can do what they want. They can divide it in the future as they wish. We are simply recognizing what we now see to be Israel's capital.
He said more than that. In 1980, there was a motion, a law in the Knesset, saying exactly what he said in his speech. He adopted that law of unified capital of Israel, containing Supreme Court, government, parliament. He adopted that phrasing even. He did not say that East Jerusalem is an occupied area. He did not say that East Jerusalem can be the capital or should be the capital of the Palestinian. And this is the most dangerous thing, he is dealing with the issue of Jerusalem as it is internal issue of the Israelis. And it is not.
Fact is, he remains the most powerful man in the world. You could perhaps argue about that. China's the rising power. But nonetheless, Donald Trump, when it comes to the Middle East, is the most important man in the world. He has made a decision which reflects the fact that, frankly, many Palestinians would now acknowledge you've lost. You have lost in the sense that your interests are never going to be achievable.
I do not agree with you totally. It is
you mean
one of
you
the
do in part you do.
It is one of the most toughest and difficult areas for the Palestinian people. I agree with that. But we had much more difficult phases in our history of the Palestinian history. This nation, the Palestinian people, is very much insisting in implementing and achieving his national rights. And it is rights of a people under occupation seeking to be free, to be independent, to be sovereign, alongside the state of Israel. And Mr. Trump is saying to Palestinians and to Israelis, you will take it all, and to Palestinians, you will take nothing. That's why he disqualified himself as a broker.
But I suppose what I'm wondering is what you, as an Arab Israeli, and let's not forget you're an Israeli citizen, you serve in the Israeli Knesset, the Israeli parliament, you represent the interests of the Arab Israeli population in Israel. I wonder what you make of the reaction from Hamas leaders like Ismail Haniyeh saying things like, you know, we will not allow Trump's declaration to pass, even if we lose our heads in the process. All the talk of a new intifada, all the talk of Palestinians putting their lives on the line to protest. We have been here so many times before. Is there not now a weary resignation that says to you, in the privacy of your own mind, there is no point anymore to this sort of talk of laying down our lives, new intifadas? It's gone.
I am representing the Arab-Palestinian minority in Israel. We are part of the Palestinian people. There are three parts: Palestinians inside Israel, Palestinians in 67 areas, and Palestinians in the diaspora. But we are also citizens of the State of Israel.
That's right.
We are supporting Palestinian self-determination, and this right is not negotiable. And we are, as citizens also, saying in the Knesset, from the podium, I am saying exactly in Arabic, in English, in Hebrew, that we are promoting Israeli-Palestinian peace. We are not supporting violence. We said it in the past always. I am supporting non-violent popular resistance. It succeeded in the last year when the magnometers were put in Al-Aqsa Mosque, and it succeeded when the church closed the church because the government of Israel tried to impose taxes on the Christian church in Jerusalem.
Yeah, one could say it's easy for you to talk about protests, to use your words in the Knesset, but if you live in the occupied West Bank, the reality of protest is much more dangerous. I mean, we have in our minds, perhaps right now, the case of Ahad Tamimi, the young girl, teenage girl in the West Bank village who struck out at an Israeli officer because she was so angry at what the Israeli troops were doing in and around her village. She's now in a court facing serious charges and may well end up in prison. You know, it's easy for you as an Arab Israeli to say things, but much more difficult for protesters in the West Bank not to jeopardize their own security in this call for civil disobedience.
First of all, I am accompanying Ahad Tamimi in her military court. She's courageous.
Yes, and you can walk away at the end of the day. She can't.
13 of us, Stephen, were shot by snipers and killed in 2000, citizens of the State of Israel, because we just demonstrated against Ariel Sharon getting into Al-Aqsa Mosque. 13 of us. From that point until today, 55 Arab citizens were killed by the Israeli security authorities without being prosecuted. We are in danger because of the way Israeli police is dealing with us as enemies, not as citizens. But I am not in a position to preach Palestinians in Gaza and West Bank how to resist. It is the natural way people, nation under occupation are resisting.
It's not your occupation. Fight, really. It's not your fight, is it?
It's my nation fight.
Well,
I am a Palestinian also.
But you're also an Israeli. You happen to have the vote. You happen to have a seat in the Knesset. You know, there is a distinction between you and those Palestinians who live on the West Bank, who live under military occupation. And of course, we can talk about the subset, the other Palestinians who live in exile beyond the borders.
They are suffering
Yes,
much more.
But I'm interested in the position of the Arab Israelis. And it seems to me, amongst Arab Israelis, the overwhelming feeling right now is one of weary acceptance. And if you look at opinion polls, and there have been several in the last year, which show that actually a clear majority of Arab Israelis have a positive feeling about their lives in Israel. A positive feeling. I'm
smiling because I am living there. Arabs Arab citizens of the State of Israel are discriminated in all fields of life. And in polls, scientific polls, not polls of Israeli rightist newspapers, they are saying that they feel second or third degree. Not only they are feeling the discrimination is in land allocation, budget, employment, agriculture, no industrial zones. We are discriminated in all fields of life.
The Israel Democracy Institute ran a major poll last year. Most Arab Israelis, 60.5%, described their personal situation as good or very good. Doesn't seem to match what you're saying at all.
I don't agree with these results. We are living there, but there are other polls that you are not bringing here, saying that at least 75% of the Arab citizens are saying that they do believe that the state is dealing with them as enemies, not as equal citizens.
Why do you think thousands of Arabs living in Jerusalem, and they have a very difficult grey area status because, of course, under international law, East Jerusalem is occupied territory,
Indeed.
but they are regarded, since the annexation by Israel of East Jerusalem, as people with rights to residency, and indeed the right to apply for citizenship in Israel. And thousands have indeed applied for citizenship. What does that tell you?
Only thousands. We are talking about almost 300,000 Palestinians in East Jerusalem. You are talking about thousands. And it says a lot. Those Palestinians in East Jerusalem are facing strangulation policy, deportation, revoking their identity card, sending them out of Jerusalem. Thousands of them. It is to say that the education system in East Jerusalem is one of the worst education system conditions led by the Israeli authorities. It is to say that those in East Jerusalem, Palestinians, not all of them are free to get into Al-Aqsa Mosque. Demolition orders in East Jerusalem, but more also in our villages, in Arab villages, inside Israel because of lack of planning and housing. Do you know, Stephen, that there is a law called Community Villages Law preventing me, Ahmed Tibi, as an Israeli citizen, Arab citizen, from living in 800 community village. I can live here in London or in Manhattan, but not in these areas.
Are you saying, and using the words of that resolution from the United Nations in 1975, are you saying that you still regard Zionism as racism?
The practice of Zionism daily is to say that Jews are superior to non-Jews in Israel.
Well, just answer the question, because it's a very famous UN resolution, and it was repealed, one of the only UN resolutions that has ever been repealed 16 years later, because the consensus across the world that that language was unacceptable and wrong. I'm just asking you whether you actually still use that phrase.
We Palestinians, mainly Palestinians inside Israel or outside the Green Line, victims of Zionism because of racism of many aspects of Zionism against non-Jews, mainly against original or indigenous Palestinians.
You see, I think this debate is important because right now there is a discussion both inside Israel, amongst Arabs outside of the territories, but also amongst Palestinians and Arab Israelis about what is going to happen if the two-state solution is dead. And we've discussed Donald Trump and we've discussed the current political situation, and nobody would pretend that the two-state solution looks alive right now. So there is a debate about a unitary state solution. And hang on, and if there is to be a unitary state, do you believe it would be acceptable for the Jewish Israeli population to be in a minority?
The speech of Mr. Trump adopted the Israeli narrative, and it was a bullet in the head of the two-state solution, of the two-state vision. Instead of two-state solution, it became two-state illusion. That's why there are more and more talk about one-state solution.
You've talked about it.
I talked about
You even posited the notion that you might run for prime minister of a unitary state from the Mediterranean to the Jordan River, and you said if it was a runoff between me and Mr. Netanyahu, I would win, no doubt about it.
If this will be the case, and equal right will be there between Jews and Arabs from the sea to the river, a Palestinian will win the post of the prime minister.
I very advisedly asked you, can you countenance, do you think it is in any way realistic to think that the Jewish population of Israel will ever accept a situation in which they are in a minority? This is the country that was set up under a UN resolution as the homeland for the Jews after the Second World War. You understand that, I believe, better than most Arabs, because you made a very famous speech understanding the impact of the Holocaust on the Jewish people and on the creation of the State of Israel. So I put it to you again, can you imagine a unitary state where the Jewish population is in a minority?
I, as a victim of the victim in that speech, can tell you that I realize that for the Israelis, it's a nightmare to talk about equal one democratic state. That's why when you are giving two choices for them, two-state solution or one-state solution, they are immediately choosing the third choice, which is not there, the status quo. That's why I am saying two-state solution is the optimal solution that the international community is supporting. But the condition is immediate ending of the occupation, and Israel is rearranging occupation.
But you don't just say that. You say very inflammatory things. In an interview not so long ago, you allowed your imagination to run. You said, we will, if there is to be a unitary state, we will annul the Declaration of Independence from 1948. In its place, we'll write a civil declaration that represents all citizens, Jews, Muslims, Christians, and Druze. You said it's untenable for a democratic state to have a Declaration of Independence that's fundamentally Jewish. You were asked, what would the country's name be? You said, I don't know. Its parliament will decide. What about the flag, you were asked? And you said, yes, that will have to change. Now, when you say these things, how do you think Israelis, Jewish Israelis, respond?
When Israelis are killing Palestinians, how we would react? It's a democratic vision. I think that any democratic in Europe and the international community should respect my vision of democracy if there will not be a two-state solution. Yes, I want to be equal with Israeli Jews. I want to be equal with anybody in Tel Aviv and Taibi, Nazareth and Hedera. But I will never accept to be inferior to any Israeli Jew just because the state is defining itself as a Jewish state. Because defining yourself as Jewish and democratic, it's an oxymoron, Stephen. And this is oxymoron that we are fighting against day by day.
If I may say so, it seems to me your speech was based on empathy and a genuine effort to understand the Israeli mindset. One aspect of the Israeli mindset is that they see more than a decade ago, when Palestinians had a free election, that a majority, at least in Gaza, voted quite clearly for Hamas, a movement that is dedicated in its original constitution to the destruction of the state of Israel.
Do you want new rules for democracy? It is election. It's democracy. Palestinian people, like in England, like in Germany, like in France, like even in the United States, who just elected a very bizarre president. We, Palestinians, are free to elect exactly whatever Palestinians want. Once it is Fatah,
and you
once
think
it's Hamas.
Israelis are going to listen to this and your belief that, oh, the Palestinians can choose Hamas if they want to, and still believe that there is any possible reason why they should listen to you talking about a unitary state?
They can listen to me talking about two-state solution. They are not listening neither for that nor for that. And what is Netanyahu is proposing for Israelis and Palestinians? More and more war, more and more confrontation, more and more friction, more and more bloodshed. I am proposing peace. I am proposing freedom for Palestinians and peace for Israelis and Palestinians. It is challenging.
It is. If you wanted to build some bridges and build confidence, there are certain things you could do. I mean, for a start, you could denounce your fellow Arab-Israeli member of Knesset who is now in prison because he was smuggling telephones to Palestinian prisoners, Mr. Ghattas. What did you make of what he did, and how disappointed were you in him?
The 13 MKs of the joint list, all of us, are not using this way of struggle in order to act as parliamentarians. It is not the way. He said so, his colleagues in Balad said so, we, myself and others said so, and he is paying the price in the jail.
And why did you boycott Shimon Peres's funeral?
Because I carried my condolences to his daughter.
No, you didn't go to the funeral. Even Mahmoud Abbas went to the funeral. I'm just wondering, again, what kind of signal you're sending to the Israelis?
Stephen, am I obliged to act exactly as the consensus, the Israeli consensus, is demanding from me? There is a historical problem. I can understand Israelis when they cannot do something that hurt their feelings. Please understand our feeling as national leaders.
I just wonder whether you paid heed to the words of the first Arab Israeli to be a Supreme Court justice. And that in itself tells you something about the Israeli system. Salim Jubran, you know,
yes.
He served in the Supreme Court. He was
yes.
proud to do so. And when toward the time he was leaving, he said, yes, I complain a lot about the state of Israel, its treatment of Arab Israelis, but I'm also complaining about us, leaders of the Arab community. We must take responsibility and handle problems. Hasn't he got a point there, that you spend so much time grandstanding about the long-term prospects for a peaceful solution between Arab and between Palestinian and Israeli? You don't actually spend very much time trying to deliver a better life for your constituents.
You are mistaken, Stephen, because according to the statistics and numbers of the Knesset activity, 85% of our activity is focused on social and economical issues of our community. And there is misleading coverage of our activity. Yes, we are responsible for the well-being of our community. We should be much more interested, focusing, acting in the issue, for example, of internal violence in our community, which is almost devastating.
It's a scourge, particularly violence against women inside Arab-Israeli communities.
And who is taking part in every demonstration against that? Who issued a motion against that? Who issued a motion against using weapon in community events? Myself.
And I guess what the Israelis, I can hear the voices in my head, the Israelis watching this will say yes, and you're much freer to make those sorts of protests and to demand better from the community inside Israel than you would be if you were living in a village in the West Bank or indeed a different Arab country.
Say it in Syria or in Libya. Say it.
Well, you can say it.
It's a racist notice. You know why? Because to tell me, Ahmed, that because I am Arab, I should move to Syria as they are demanding day by day in the Knesset, or I should compare myself to third world countries, non-democratic, totalitarian regime, when Israel is claiming that it is democracy. The control group and the control state, Stephen, should be Sweden, France, England, not Libya, not Syria, not third world states in Africa or South America. I want to be equal, exactly like citizens in Kochav Yair, in Tel Aviv, and I do not want to be compared with totalitarian regimes, but with democratic states. It is the test. Can you accept the idea that an Israeli citizen who is Arab is willing to be equal?
It's a good way to end this interview. Ahmed Tibi, thank you very much for being on Hard Talk.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Nice Hard Talk.